In today's video, we're making mosaic boxes. These functional home decor art pieces keep our treasures and memories safe. So whether you want bright and cheerful or more serious and subdued, they're a quick, easy, tailored mosaic that you can create in a few short hours. Let's get to it. Welcome back, and if you're new here, my name is Julie. And on this channel, we talk about tips, tricks, tools, adhesives, materials, and specific mosaic projects, all to shorten your learning curve when it comes to creating mosaic art. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, please consider subscribing. Boxes are a universally loved item in home decor. Women love them, men love them, kids love them because they rely on them to keep their keepsakes safe. And when you add mosaic to the substrate, you're creating a whole new experience. They're unique and truly one-of-a-kind small pieces of functional art. You're in control of the colors and the design, and just like with any other mosaic piece, you can tailor it to the recipient. Boxes come in all shapes and sizes, and I generally like working with smaller boxes, which allows me to quickly pull together a mosaic. Mosaic boxes are also helpful in your gift giving. You could include a sweet memento inside, maybe a gift card, or what about an engagement ring? Just an idea. So in today's video, I'll show you how I tiled, grouted, and finished off a few boxes from start to finish. We've got a lot to cover, so let's get started. Before I talk about and start searching for the actual substrates, I first need to consider the designs. I have 3 ideas in mind, design-wise, that I want to make, so now I'll look through my box inventory to see what I have that would accommodate those designs. There are so many amazing, wonderful box shapes available out there, and I'll include a bunch of traditional as well as fun shapes down below in the description in case you're looking for some substrate ideas. After looking through what I have, I decided on boxes that are shaped in a square, circle, and rectangle. Kinda sounds like a day at preschool, doesn't it? Now today, girls and boys, we're going to learn about squares, circles, and rectangles. And once you've decided on your substrate or substrates, it's time to prep them, especially if they're made of wood. I did a video here on the channel all about how to prep your wood for mosaic, and I'll include a link down below in the description so you can check it out. When prepping wood for sealing, I like to work on wax paper because the wet substrates won't stick to it once they're dry. Before I do the actual sealing, I'm going to lightly sand the substrates both inside and out to get rid of any splinters or rough spots. Now I'm using a flexible sanding block to do that. You don't have to spend very much time on this step, just lightly go over the surfaces. So I got started sealing the substrates. I painted the outsides and let them dry, and then I flipped them over and painted the insides. Now 2 of the 3 substrates have hinges, so I'm very careful not to get the sealer anywhere near the hinges. And if your substrate has a special closure, you'll want to keep your sealer away from that as well. Once the substrates are dry, they're ready for the next step, which is tiling. I'll include a list down below in the description for all of the substrates, materials, tools, adhesives, and grout that I'm using in today's video in case you'd like to make some mosaic boxes of your own. As I mentioned a little earlier, now that the boxes are sealed and dry, I will quickly go over design-wise what I did with each box, and I'll try to throw in any tips that I encountered along the way to help you with your boxes. First up is this square box. Now I'm going to make a sunburst design out of stained glass. To cut all of the glass, I'll be using this handy waffle grid. If you've never seen one of these before, it allows you to cut glass on the surface of it And then the tiny little openings of the waffle grid catch any glass splinters, dust, or pieces of stained glass. It keeps all of that, or at least the bulk of that, off of my work table surface. There's nothing worse than putting your hand down on a glass splinter, am I right? And for the cutting, I'll be using a Thomas grip glass cutter, running pliers, and wheeled glass nippers. You could also use a pistol grip or pencil grip glass cutter, and I'll list those down below in the description as well. I'm working with 3 colors of stained glass in this design, which includes red, yellow, and orange. So I got started cutting the glass down into strips. I want all the strips roughly the same width. The length of the strip doesn't matter so much to me because I'm going to be cutting them down anyways a little later. Now with this particular mosaic, I had a few things going on. First, I was a little pressed for time, I'll be honest. And second, I've had a few of you ask in the comments of previous videos how to tile on mosaic mesh and then install or adhere the mesh piece to the substrate. So I'm going to show you 2 different ways to tile this mosaic box. If you aren't familiar how to use mosaic mesh, I did do a video here on the channel all about how to use mosaic mesh in your projects, and I'll include a link down below in the description so you can check it out. The first method to tile this box would be to draw your design directly onto the substrate. I'm not going to hold myself to these lines I've drawn, but I'll just use them as a guide once I start tiling. However, you do not want to use this method if you're using transparent glass or TESSERAE. Your sketched design will show through the glass. So I sketched the actual sunburst design, and then I drew horizontal lines as a guide for the andamento or the flow of the stained glass TESSERAE. Now the second method would be to cut out a piece of mosaic mesh in the exact size of your substrate area to be tiled. Then you would transfer the design by tracing over your substrate using a dark permanent marker. Before I start tiling, I taped a piece of plastic to my work table so that my adhered TESSERAE wouldn't stick once they were dry. Once the initial cutting was done, I cut the stained glass strips further using wheeled glass nippers. And I tried to keep the pieces about the same length. And now that all the cutting is done, I got started with the tiling. For the adhesive, I decided on tile adhesive, or you might also know it as mastic, and I used this for a few reasons. First off, the stained glass pieces are different thicknesses, and I would like them to be closer in height on the surface of the box. So I needed to use an adhesive that would allow me to build up the TESSERAE underneath. Second, I was in and out of the studio when tiling this piece, and I wasn't going to mix up multiple little teeny tiny batches of thin-set mortar throughout the day. So tile adhesive allowed me to tile a little and stop, then pick back up later with doing a little more tiling and stopping, and so on. So I started tiling the center of the sun using the horizontal guides that I drew on the mesh. If you have to cut a piece of TESSERAE and it was jagged or had a rough edge, you can always use a sanding stone to smooth it out. And yep, you guessed it, I recently did a video here on the channel all about how to use a sanding stone or grinding stone in your mosaic work, and I'll include a link down below in the description so you can check it out. The tiling went very quickly. I checked my TESSERAE level periodically just to make sure the pieces were pretty much level. Next, I got to work with the ring of orange glass, which outlines the yellow glass. And since I was working on this piece throughout the day, I made sure I cleaned up any extra adhesive that may have oozed out before I was done tiling for that session. Now by doing this, I have a clean slate to come back to once I'm able to tile again. And also by doing this, I'm eliminating the possibility of any hard tile adhesive that I would have to cut away and mess with. Finally, I got to work with tiling the red glass, which is considered the background color. And once that was all done, I let the meshed piece sit at least 24 hours to fully dry. Once my piece had fully dried, I slowly and carefully pulled the mesh piece off of the clear plastic. Now, as you can see, I tried to keep it as straight or flat as possible as I was pulling it off. I didn't purposely bend or roll the mesh. And you can see just how stiff the dried mesh piece is now. The final step in tiling this mosaic box is getting the meshed piece installed or adhered to the final substrate. I covered the box with a generous layer of weld bond. And if you aren't familiar with weld bond, it's a white glue that dries clear and has an incredible hold. So I covered the entire box surface with weld bond and then laid the mesh mosaic on top. The weld bond is fluid enough that you can slide around your mosaic until you get it right where you want it. Before I was done with this piece, I made sure I cleaned off any extra weld bond that may have oozed out the sides. And now this box will sit and fully cure for at least 24 hours before I move on to the grouting. This next box is a recreation of a mosaic wall art that I made years ago called Bookshelf. Only this version is smaller and I didn't include the brown glass on the top or bottom to mimic the wood shelves. I'm just focusing on the book spines this time. And for this design, I'll be working on the rectangular substrate or the rectangular box. So to get started, I'm working with strips of stained glass again. Each book spine will incorporate at least 2 different colors of stained glass, and I don't want 2 of the same color to be next to each other. I continued to lay out the pieces of stained glass on top of the box and drew a line across it using a permanent marker to indicate where I'd like to score it using a glass cutter. This is a process of finding the colors of glass you'd like to incorporate and deciding how wide you'd like each book spine to be. I repeated a few of the colors in the design in order to distribute the colors throughout the piece. I didn't want it to be all dark or all light. I wanted a nice mix. So once the pieces were all roughly cut and laying in the order I liked, I got to work drawing horizontal lines using a permanent marker where I would cut the glass in order to include a, quote, book title in another color stained glass. I cut them down and sanded any sharp or rough edges with a sanding stone. Then I started gluing down the tessera using weld bond. I coated the entire surface of the substrate with weld bond, and then I adhered the TESSERAE. Next, I got to work cutting really thin pieces of stained glass to indicate a book label or title. I went about this in the same way of measuring, then marking where I wanted to cut the glass, and then finally cutting and grinding. This process also went fairly quickly. Again, I tried to use different colors and not put two of the same color label or title next to each other. Once I was done, I let it sit and fully dry for at least 24 hours. The third and final box is a circle shape, and this box is not hinged, so I can take the lid off the bottom and work with it that way. This will be a mixed media mosaic. So I got started by drawing a loose sketch of a star directly onto the substrate. Next, I gathered different tesserae together for the star. I'm using glass tile, vitreous glass, porcelain, ceramic, smalty, and glass rod. And then I cut everything down into smaller pieces. I want to make sure that the pieces are small enough so that I can include a nice mix in the mosaic star. And then I got to tiling. Again, I'm using Weilbacher as the adhesive for this mosaic. Now, I'm working with different thicknesses of TESSERAE, but I'm not going to worry about making sure all of the TESSERAE are at the same surface level on the substrate. So the tiling went rather quickly, especially because I wasn't concerned about the different thicknesses in the TESSERAE. Once the star was tiled, I worked on selecting the colors for the background. I decided on using 3/4 inch vitreous tile, and I wanted to find 3 blues, a light, a medium, and a dark. I cut each piece of vitreous into thirds using my wheeled glass nippers. Then I got to work tiling the perimeter of the box lid, alternating between the light, medium, and dark blues. And I continued on with tiling rows and rows of alternating tesserae. When I started tiling the top of the lid, I needed to keystone my tesserae in order to ensure a better fit. Now this part does take longer to complete. After all of the tiling was done, I let it sit on top of wax paper so it wouldn't stick to the table surface once it had dried. And I kept it there for at least 24 hours. I'll include a list down below in the description of all of the substrates, materials, tools, adhesives, and grout that I use in today's video in case you'd like to create some mosaic boxes of your own. Before you mix up your grout and get started, you'll want to look over your boxes to see if anything needs to be taped off. Some of the materials you used might need to be taped off because they're made of plastic or something that could get easily scratched during the grouting process. And you might want to tape up the outside of your substrate as well, which is what I'm going to do. I'm just using painter's tape to tape around the outside of the boxes, including the hinges. If you have a box with a special closure, you'll also want to consider taping that off. And once I'm done taping off all the substrates, I'm ready to get started with mixing up my grout. Now I'm going to use charcoal gray sanded grout for all 3 boxes. Now if you aren't familiar with how to mix up grout, or thin set for that matter, or you'd like to see some different ways how to do it, or maybe you're interested in tinting or coloring your grout or thin set, I've done a few videos here on the channel all about those subjects, and I will include a link to the playlist down below in the description so you can check it out. I mixed up my grout, and as you can see, I didn't mix very much, and that's because the tiled areas of these boxes aren't very big. This one is straightforward as far as grouting goes. I'll push the grout into the grout line, going in a clockwise, counterclockwise motion, making sure I get grout into every little crack and crevice. I'll run my finger along the edge of the box to make sure it's finished off with grout as well. I'll spoon a little of the grout onto the surface and push it into the grout line or area between the stained glass by going in a clockwise, counterclockwise motion and even running my hands back and forth. Now I'm making sure I get grout into each little crack and crevice. And once I think I'm done grouting the front of the mosaic area, I'll run my finger along the edge, making sure the grout is smooth there as well. This finishes it off nicely, covering all areas of mosaic mesh that might be exposed, and it fills in the area where the tile meets the substrate. And I'll just go back and forth. I'll grout this box lid exactly the same as I did the previous 2. I'll spoon a little grout on the surface and get it started with smoothing it in, going in a clockwise, counterclockwise motion, pushing the grout into the grout line. Even though this is a mixed media piece, I'm still going to grout the entire thing. I say that because sometimes mixed media mosaics are a toss-up as to if they'll be grouted or not. But I am grouting this entire lid. Because the TESSERAE are at different heights on the surface, it will take a little longer to grout just to make sure I get grout everywhere. But also, cleaning off the grout will take a little longer, and we'll get to that in a minute. So once everything is fully grouted, I'll leave all 3 boxes to sit and dry a bit for at least 10 to 20 minutes, let's say, before I clean them off. Okay, as you can see, the grouted pieces have been sitting here drying, and they're ready for me to start cleaning off. I'm using dry paper towels to remove the extra grout from the substrate surface. I'll remove the grout the same way I put it on, gently and in a clockwise, counterclockwise motion. So the first 2 boxes are very straightforward to clean off. The glass is all at the same level, which makes it really easy. If you do knock off a piece of glass or an area of grout, simply go back and either glue it down or fill in the grout and wait an hour, then start the grouting and removal process all over again. Now, with the 3rd box, the star, I'll take my time making sure I clean away any grout in areas where it might have hidden due to the TESSERAE being at different heights. Just take your time, and if you need to, I like to use something pointed yet kind of soft like a toothpick to dig out any areas of grout. And just continue on until you get the surface area of the mosaic clean. I'll wait another 20 to 30 minutes and go back over the surface, polishing things up. And then I'll run an old paintbrush over the surface to get rid of any of the grout dust. To finish off the boxes, you can leave them as is, or you can opt to paint or stain them depending on what your substrate is made of. I even sometimes like to use shoe polish to give the wood some subtle matte color, and then I'll sign my name and seal it. And I'll include a list down below in the description for all the substrates, materials, tools, adhesives, and grout that I used in today's video in case you'd like to make some mosaic boxes of your own. Question of the day, let me know down in the comments if you've ever made a mosaic box, and if so, what materials did you use? I would love to hear. Thank you so much for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up as it really does help my channel, and subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell notification so you never miss a single upload, and let me know in the comments if there's something you'd like me to cover in a future video. I'll see you soon. Bye. Ooh, I got that in right before the AC kicked on. Let's do this, shall we? Oh, much better. No, let me start again. There is a very loud video game going on out there, and he was told I was recording. As I mentioned a little earlier, now that the glass is back on, and cut! So, hello. Guess I'm okay. Yeah? Let me do all of that all over again. If you're looking for more mosaic inspiration, you can check out one of these two videos. Until then, see ya. Done.